There are days when your routine shatters, and in that crack you uncover truths you've been avoiding for years. For Emily Carter, that day was just a regular Tuesday in September, or at least it was supposed to be. Emily was the heiress to the Carter textile empire. 32 factories across 6 countries, 3,000 employees, annual revenue exceeding $100 million. The kind of woman who graces the pages of Forbes, who gives lectures at Harvard, who flies first class to meetings on 3 continents. The kind of woman who's too busy to see her own grandmother die. But that Tuesday, something shifted the plan. A last-minute cancelled meeting, a flight to Phoenix postponed by 3 hours, and suddenly Emily found herself walking into her mansion in Bel Air Estates at 10 in the morning instead of her usual 2 in the afternoon. 3 hours difference. That's all it took for her world to crumble and begin to rebuild. When Emily opened the front door, the house was silent, as always. A heavy, uncomfortable silence filled with unspoken things. She dropped her briefcase in the entryway, slipped off her Manolo Blahnik heels, and that's when she heard it. A voice, soft, melodious, singing. Emily froze. Nobody sang in that house. Nobody had sung in that house in years. The voice was coming from the 2nd floor, from her grandmother's room. Emily crept up the stairs silently, like an intruder in her own home. Each step creaked softly beneath her bare feet. The voice grew clearer. It was Maria, their housekeeper, singing a song Emily vaguely recognized. Something about flowers, something about love. Emily approached the door to Grandma Eleanor's room. It was ajar, just a crack, enough to see without being seen, and what she saw took her breath away. Maria was leaning over the special bed where Grandma Eleanor had spent the last 4 years of her life. Emily's 87-year-old grandmother lay in that bed as always, immobile, fragile, a body betrayed by a massive stroke that had left her completely bedridden. But that wasn't what shocked Emily. It was the way Maria was touching her. With the softest hands Emily had ever seen, Maria was bathing Grandma Eleanor. But it wasn't a mechanical, functional, quick bath. It was something completely different. Maria had placed warm towels around Grandma Eleanor's body to keep her warm. She had a basin of lukewarm water, scented with something that smelled like lavender and chamomile, and with a soft sponge. She was cleaning every inch of skin with a delicacy that bordered on reverence. As she did, she sang, and she spoke. "Grandma Eleanor, look how beautiful the garden is today," Maria said in a melodious voice. "The roses you love so much are blooming. Red as blood, you used to say, red as passion." Emily felt her throat tighten. Maria continued, moving the sponge in gentle circles over Grandma Eleanor's left arm. That arm that hadn't moved in 4 years. That arm Emily barely dared to touch because it reminded her too much that death was near. "Today, we're going to use the rose lotion I made for you," Maria continued. "I made it with petals from the garden. I know you love natural roses, not those commercial creams with artificial scents." Emily didn't know Maria made homemade lotions, didn't know Maria knew Grandma Eleanor loved roses. She didn't know any of this. How much more didn't she know? Maria finished washing the left arm and moved to the right. Her movements were precise but loving. There was no hurry, no distaste, none of that look of resignation that Emily had seen in so many professional nurses who had passed through that house. There was love, pure, simple, inexplicable love. While washing the right arm, Maria began to massage it gently. Emily recognized the movement, prevention of muscle atrophy, stimulation of circulation, techniques that only someone with medical training would know. Who was Maria Torres? Really? Emily had hired Maria 2 years ago, a 42-year-old woman, quiet, efficient, who did her job without drama or complaints. Emily paid her well, $12,000 a month plus benefits. Maria cleaned the house, prepared meals, and was supposed to help with the basic care of Grandma Eleanor. Basic care. That's what Emily had specified in the job interview. Help with feeding, changing diapers, keeping her clean. But what Emily was witnessing wasn't basic care. This was devotion. Maria continued talking as she washed. Her voice was a constant, comforting murmur, like a gentle river. You know, Grandma Eleanor, my grandmother was also bedridden for the last years of her life. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS they call it, horrible disease. I watched her lose the ability to move, to speak, to eat, but she never lost her dignity, because my mother made sure of that. Maria paused, gently drying Grandma Eleanor's torso with a fluffy towel. My mother taught me that dignity isn't what you can do. Dignity is how you're treated when you can't do anything. And you deserve dignity, Grandma Eleanor. You deserve to be treated like the queen you were. Emily felt tears begin to sting her eyes. Grandma Eleanor had been a queen, not literally, but almost. Founder of the first textile design school in the country. A businesswoman when that was practically impossible in the 1950s. A mentor to hundreds of designers, a force of nature. And now she was there, immobile in a bed, depending on the kindness of a housekeeper to maintain a vestige of the dignity that had once defined her life. Maria moved Grandma Eleanor with expert care, turning her slightly to one side to wash her back. The movement was fluid, professional. Emily recognized the technique. She'd seen nurses do it, but Maria wasn't a nurse. Or was she? Let's check your skin, Grandma Eleanor, Maria murmured. These pressure ulcers are treacherous, but don't worry, you don't have any because we move you every 2 hours as we should. Every 2 hours? Emily felt a weight sinking in her stomach. She had hired Maria for 8-hour shifts, from 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. But if Maria was moving Grandma Eleanor every 2 hours, that meant there was someone else there during those late hours. Emily had hired a night nurse, a woman named Patricia, who came from 6 in the evening until 6 in the morning. But what happened between 4 in the afternoon, when Maria left, and 6 in the evening, when Patricia arrived? 2 hours. 2 hours where Grandma Eleanor was alone. Except now, Emily wondered if she had ever really been alone. Maria finished washing Grandma Eleanor's back and gently turned her back to her original position. Then, with almost reverential movements, she began to apply the homemade rose lotion. This is my secret, Grandma Eleanor, Maria whispered conspiratorially. Rose petals steeped in almond oil for 3 weeks, then filtered and mixed with beeswax and vitamin E. It keeps the skin soft, prevents dryness, and it smells like the garden you loved so much. Emily realized she was crying silently. Never, in 4 years, had she thought to make a homemade lotion for her grandmother. Never had she considered what she might like to smell. Never had she thought of anything beyond making sure she was clean, fed, alive, as if that were enough, as if life were just breathing instead of living. Maria massaged the lotion into Grandma Eleanor's thin, fragile skin. Her hands moved in circles, stimulating circulation, providing human contact, giving love through touch. And then, Maria did something Emily had never seen. She took one of Grandma Eleanor's hands in her own and kissed it gently. You are very loved, Grandma Eleanor, Maria whispered. Very loved. And it was at that moment that Emily saw something impossible. A glimmer in Grandma Eleanor's eyes, a spark that hadn't been there in years. Grandma Eleanor was looking at Maria, really looking. Not that glassy, empty stare that had been her constant expression since the stroke, but a focused, present, conscious gaze. And slowly, with an effort that seemed to cost every ounce of energy in her body, Grandma Eleanor's lips moved. Maria froze, watching. Grandma Eleanor's lips moved again, trying to form a word, a sound. Maria leaned closer, her ear near Grandma Eleanor's mouth, and then Emily heard it. A voice, raspy, barely a whisper, but unmistakable. "Angel," Grandma Eleanor had said. "Angel." Maria recoiled, tears streaming down her face. Her hand flew to cover her mouth, trying to stifle a sob of pure emotion. "Oh, Grandma Eleanor," Maria whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm not an angel. I'm just someone who cares about you." But Grandma Eleanor kept looking at her with those clear, focused eyes, and Emily could see the intention there, the gratitude, the love. Emily had to lean against the doorframe to keep from falling. Her grandmother had spoken. Her grandmother, who hadn't uttered a coherent word in 4 years, who the doctors had said would probably never speak again, who was so damaged by the stroke that communication was impossible. She had spoken, and it hadn't been Emily's name that she'd uttered. It hadn't been her granddaughter, her blood, her heir. It had been Maria, the housekeeper, the woman Emily paid $12,000 a month and to whom she barely spoke more than 3 sentences a day. Maria was the angel, not Emily. Emily backed away from the door in silence. She went downstairs on trembling legs. She went straight to her study and closed the door. And she wept. She wept for the shame, for the guilt. For the 4 years she had avoided really looking at her grandmother. For the 5-minute visits where she'd pop into the room, ask the nurse how things were, and leave without even touching Grandma Eleanor's hand. For the fear, because that was what it really was. Fear. Fear of seeing the strongest woman she had ever known reduced to a fragile body in a bed. Fear of facing her own mortality. Fear of feeling the pain of losing someone she loved. So instead of feeling, she had kept busy. Business trips, board meetings, international conferences. There was always a reason, always an excuse not to be there. And in her absence, Maria had been present. Maria, who probably earned in a month what Emily spent on a single pair of Manolo Blahnik shoes. Maria, who no one noticed, who no one thanked, who did her invisible work without applause or recognition. Maria, who loved Grandma Eleanor in a way that Emily had forgotten how to do. Emily wiped her tears and opened her laptop. She needed to know more. She searched. Maria Torres, housekeeper. Nothing useful. Then she remembered something. When she had hired Maria, it had been through an agency. Emily had asked for references, of course. She always asked for references. She searched through her files until she found the folder. Maria Torres, 42 years old, single, no children. Work experience. Registered nurse at Phoenix General Hospital for 15 years. Speciality, palliative care and geriatrics. Emily stared at the screen. Maria had been a nurse, a professional nurse with 15 years of experience. What was a nurse with 15 years of experience doing working as a housekeeper? Emily continued reading. Reason for leaving Phoenix General Hospital. Voluntary resignation, August 2019. 2 years before Emily hired her, Emily dialed the agency's number. She needed answers. "Good afternoon, Professional Caregivers Agency," a female voice answered. "This is Emily Carter. I hired one of your employees 2 years ago, Maria Torres. I need additional information." There was a pause. "One moment, Mrs. Carter." Emily waited, her heart beating faster than normal. "Yes, here's the file. What do you need to know?" "It says she worked as a nurse for 15 years but resigned voluntarily. Do you know why?" Another longer pause. "Mrs. Carter, we don't normally share this information, but given that Maria works for you, the reason was severe burnout. She had been working in the palliative care unit, watching patients die daily. She had an emotional breakdown after a particularly difficult patient passed away. She decided she needed to get away from medicine." Emily felt her heart clench. "And she chose to be a housekeeper?" In her own words in the interview with us, she wanted to continue helping people, but in a less intense way. A doctor, but more humane. She said medicine had become too clinical for her, that she'd forgotten patients were people, not just diagnoses. Emily closed her eyes. Maria had left a 15-year career because she cared too much and chose a job where she could still care, but in a way that preserved her own humanity. Anything else, Mrs. Carter? No, that's all. Thank you. Emily hung up, remaining seated at her desk, staring at the wall. Maria wasn't overqualified by accident. She was overqualified by choice. She'd sacrificed prestige, salary, professional recognition, everything, to be able to care for people in a way that felt real, in a way that felt like love. Emily stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water. Her hands were trembling, just slightly. How long had Maria been doing this? Treating Grandma Eleanor, not as a patient, but as a loved person? How many small, invisible moments of dignity and love had Grandma Eleanor alone witnessed? Emily went back upstairs to the second floor. This time she didn't hide. She knocked on the door of Grandma Eleanor's room. "Come in," Maria said, her voice lightly surprised. Emily entered. Maria was now dressing Grandma Eleanor in a soft lavender housecoat. Grandma Eleanor's hair had been carefully brushed and braided. She looked beautiful, peaceful, cared for. Maria stood up quickly. "Mrs. Carter, I wasn't expecting you so early. I'm sorry, I should have already finished with—" Emily raised her hand, stopping her. "Don't apologize. Please." Maria looked at her with cautious eyes. Emily approached the bed. For the first time in months, she really looked at her grandmother. Not a quick, 5-second glance before rushing off. A real look. Grandma Eleanor's eyes were closed now, resting, but her face looked serene in a way that Emily couldn't remember seeing in years. "She looks good," Emily murmured. "She looks at peace." Maria nodded slowly. "She's a fighter. Stronger than the doctors think." Emily turned to Maria. "I heard what you said, and I saw her talk." Maria's eyes widened. "You heard? I arrived early. I saw you. I heard you." Silence filled the room, a silence heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, Emily spoke. "You're a nurse." Maria lowered her gaze. "I was. Not anymore." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you didn't want a nurse," Maria responded softly. "You wanted a housekeeper who could also help with basic care. If I had told you I was a nurse, you would have expected me to work like a nurse, with nurses' hours, with nurses' tasks, with a nurse's professional distance. And I can't do that anymore." Emily swallowed hard. "Why can't you?" "Because I care too much, and it breaks me." Those words hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. Maria continued, her voice barely a whisper. "When you're a nurse, you're supposed to maintain emotional distance. You're not supposed to get attached, because if you do, it destroys you to see them suffer, to see them die. But I could never do that. I loved every patient, and every death tore me apart a little more. So you chose this. I chose to care for one person at a time. I chose to be able to love them without apologizing. I chose dignity over efficiency." Emily felt the tears returning. "You've been giving my grandmother something I couldn't." Maria looked her directly in the eyes. "It's not too late for you to give it to her too." Those words hung in the air of the room. "It's not too late for you to give it to her too." Emily looked at her grandmother, sleeping peacefully. "But how? I don't know how to do what you do." Maria smiled softly. "I can teach you, if you want to learn." Emily nodded without hesitation. "I want to, please." And so began Emily Carter's education. The next day, Emily cancelled 3 meetings, something she had never done in 15 years of running the company. She told her assistant she had an urgent family matter for the first time in her adult life. That wasn't a pretense, it was the truth. She arrived home at 8 in the morning, when Maria normally began her shift. Maria was waiting for her in the kitchen, preparing Grandma Eleanor's breakfast. "Good morning," Emily said, feeling strangely nervous in her own house. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter. Ready to begin?" "Ready." Maria handed her an apron. "First, We're going to prepare breakfast. Grandma Eleanor needs soft foods, easy to swallow. She has dysphagia, difficulty swallowing, from the stroke. Emily put on the apron. Never in her life had she worn an apron. She had private chefs for that. Today we're making oatmeal with mashed banana, Maria continued, showing her the ingredients. Warm temperature, not hot. Puree consistency, not liquid, not solid. If it's too liquid, she can aspirate it into her lungs. If it's too solid, she can't swallow it. Emily listened intently, taking mental notes as if she were in a board meeting. And we add honey, not sugar, Maria said, pouring a spoonful into the bowl. Honey is gentler on the throat. It helps the food slide down. How do you know all this? 15 years in geriatric care, Maria responded with a sad smile, and 2 years caring for my own grandmother before she passed. Experience is a cruel but effective teacher. They went upstairs together to the second floor, carrying the breakfast on a tray. Maria showed Emily how to position the bed at a 45-degree angle. Never fully lying down when she eats, Maria explained. Risk of aspiration, never fully sitting up either. Too much strain on the body. 45 degrees is perfect. Grandma Eleanor was awake, looking towards the window where the sunlight streamed in softly. When she saw Emily, something crossed her eyes. Surprise. Hope? Good morning, Grandma, Emily said, her voice breaking slightly on the last word. It was the first time in 4 years that she had called her grandma in her presence. She normally used more formal terms. Mrs. Eleanor, Mrs. Carter, anything to maintain emotional distance. Maria showed her how to hold the spoon, how to fill it only halfway, how to wait for Grandma Eleanor to swallow completely before offering the next spoonful. The rhythm is crucial, Maria explained. Never rush it. Eating when you're bedridden, it demands enormous effort. Each bite, a battle. Emily raised the first spoonful of oatmeal, her hand trembling slightly. She brought it to her grandmother's lips. Grandma Eleanor slowly opened her mouth. Emily carefully placed the oatmeal on her tongue and withdrew the spoon, and waited. She watched as Grandma Eleanor struggled to move the food in her mouth, to position it, to swallow it. A process that would take a healthy person 2 seconds took her grandmother nearly 30 seconds. When she finally swallowed, Emily felt a wave of relief mixed with sadness. Is it always this hard for her? Emily asked Maria. Every meal, 3 times a day, every day for 4 years. Emily felt her eyes welling up with tears. And I didn't even know. They continued in silence for a while, Emily offering spoonful after spoonful, patiently waiting after each one. Maria observed, occasionally offering a gentle correction. Slower. Wait a little longer. Good. Like that. After 20 minutes, Grandma Eleanor had eaten only half the bowl. But Maria shook her head when Emily tried to offer more. It's enough, Maria said. If we force her to eat more, she could vomit. And vomiting in someone bedridden is extremely dangerous. Emily put down the spoon. How do you clean her mouth afterward? Maria showed her, with a moist gauze, gently wiping the inside of her cheeks, her tongue, her gums, preventing infection, maintaining oral hygiene. Every action had a purpose. Every movement was intentional. This wasn't just care, it was an RT. Over the next few days, Emily became Maria's shadow. She cancelled more meetings, delegated responsibilities. For the first time in 15 years, the Carter textile empire wasn't her #1 priority. Maria taught her everything. How to bathe Grandma Eleanor without moving her roughly, how to check her skin for pressure sores, how to change the sheets with her still in the bed, how to apply the homemade lotion in circular motions that stimulated circulation, how to read to her, even if it seemed like she wasn't listening, how to talk to her, even if she couldn't respond, how to love her, even though it was painful. On the 4th day, while Maria was showing her how to do range of motion exercises with Grandma Eleanor's limbs, Emily asked something that had been gnawing at her mind. Did she always know you were there? Before speaking the other day, did she know you were talking to her? That you were taking care of her? Maria stopped the movement she was making, gently bending Grandma Eleanor's knee. She looked at the elderly woman in the bed. Yes, Maria replied with certainty. She has always known. Bedridden people aren't absent. Emily, they're trapped. They can hear. They can understand. They can feel. They just can't respond. And that's 1,000 times worse than being unconscious. Emily felt her heart clench. All the times I came in here, I talked to the nurses about her as if she wasn't there. Maria nodded slowly. She heard every word, every conversation about her health as if it were a medical report. Every decision made without consulting her, every 5-minute visit where you looked at your watch more than at her. Those words were brutal, but Emily needed to hear them. How do you live with that? Emily asked. How do you care for someone knowing that they're conscious of their own prison? Maria finished the exercise with the leg and moved to the arm. Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is to treat them like furniture, like bodies that need maintenance but not love. I've seen that too many times. I've seen families who only come to make sure they're still breathing, but who never really see them. Like me, Emily murmured. Like you were being, Maria gently corrected. But now you're here, you're learning, you're seeing, and that matters more than you think. Emily looked at her grandmother. Does she know that I'm trying? Ask her. Emily blinked in surprise. What? Ask her. She can hear you. She can understand you. Just because she can't respond with words doesn't mean she can't respond. Emily leaned over the bed, getting closer to her grandmother's face. Grandma, she began, her voice trembling. I know I haven't been here. I know I've abandoned you in all the ways that matter, but I'm here now. I'm trying to learn. Can you forgive me? For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Grandma Eleanor's eyes focused on Emily's face, and with a visible effort, her lips curved barely, a fraction of a smile. But it was a smile. Emily felt the tears begin to flow. Oh, Grandma, I'm so sorry. Maria put a hand on Emily's shoulder. She knows, and she forgives you. During the following weeks, Emily transformed her life. She reduced her work hours to 4 per day, hired a co-CEO to manage daily operations, reorganized her entire structure of priorities, and every morning, she arrived home at 8 to spend 4 hours with her grandmother. Maria taught her recipes for homemade lotions, how to macerate rose petals, how to mix essential oils with neutral bases, how to make healing salves with calendula and arnica. She taught her songs that Grandma Eleanor liked, old ballads from the 40s, melodies she had danced to in her youth. Emily, who hadn't sung since elementary school, found herself humming softly while applying lotion to her grandmother's hands. She taught her patience, how to sit in silence without feeling the need to fill every moment with productivity, how to simply be present, and slowly. Grandma Eleanor began to respond more, not dramatically, not miraculously, but in small ways that meant everything. A movement of her eyes when Emily entered the room, a small squeeze of her hand when Emily held hers. Occasionally, a word, a single word that took her minutes to form, but that was clear, intentional. Thank you, beautiful, love. One afternoon, while Emily was applying lotion to her grandmother's feet, something she now did daily, Maria entered the room with a box. I have something to show you, Maria said, sitting in the chair next to the bed. She opened the box and pulled out a notebook, not just any notebook, a thick notebook, filled with notes, drawings, pasted photographs. What is this? Emily asked. It's Grandma Eleanor's care diary, Maria explained. I've been keeping it since the first day I started working here. It documents everything, her meals, her sleep patterns, her moments of clarity, her preferences, her aversions, but it also holds something more. Maria opened the notebook, to a specific page. It was filled with tiny, careful handwriting. "This is Grandma Eleanor's life story," Maria said. "Or at least, the pieces I've been able to gather, from photographs around the house, from things Patricia, the night nurse, told me, from documents I found, and from moments where Grandma Eleanor communicated things in her own way." Emily took the notebook with trembling hands. She began to read. Eleanor Carter, born 1938, daughter of Spanish immigrants, grew up poor in East LA, learned to sew at age 7, designed her first dress at 12, won a scholarship to design school at 14, almost impossible for a girl from East LA in 1952. Emily knew these basic facts, but Maria had documented more. Founded the first textile design school in the US in 1965 with borrowed money and a lot of audacity. She was rejected by 47 banks before one, run by a woman, gave her the loan. She paid that loan back in full in 3 years. Emily continued reading, page after page of her grandmother's life. Things she had never known, things she had never asked. Married James Carter in 1960, a love match not arranged, somewhat scandalous for the time. James was a graphic designer with no money. Eleanor's family disapproved. They married anyway. Had 3 children, lost 2 at birth. Only Maria, Emily's mother, survived. Lost her husband James in 1978 to a heart attack. He was 40 years old. She was 40. She never remarried. Built the Carter textile empire alone. Faced sexism, discrimination, sabotage. She never surrendered. Never yielded, never bowed her head. She was known for paying her employees double the minimum wage. She said, "Dignity begins with a salary that allows one to live, not just survive." She loved red roses, called them reminders that beauty always comes with thorns. She loved to dance, specifically swing dancing. On Sundays, she went to the Derby to dance. Emily looked up from the notebook, tears streaming down her face. "How do you know all this?" Maria smiled. "Research, conversations with people who knew her, and observation. Grandma Eleanor has told me more than you think, not always with words, but with reactions. When I play swing music, her right foot taps lightly, trying to keep the beat. When I mention James, her eyes mist over. When I talk about the design school, her face lights up." Emily clutched the notebook to her chest. "This is incredible. This is a treasure." "It's her legacy," Maria said simply. "Her life documented, so that when she's gone, she won't be forgotten." Emily looked at her grandmother lying in bed. "Thank you," she whispered to Maria. "Thank you for seeing her when I couldn't. You're welcome. But now you see her, and that's what matters." That night, Emily didn't go to sleep in her own room. She sat in the chair next to her grandmother's bed, reading the entire notebook from cover to cover. And as she read, she talked to Grandma Eleanor about what she was discovering. "Grandma, I didn't know you lost 2 babies. I didn't know you went through that pain. How did you endure it?" Pause. "I didn't know you were rejected by 47 banks." 47. "And you kept trying? That's the definition of tenacity." Pause. "I didn't know you loved swing dancing. Why did you never tell me? Why did we never talk about these things?" But Emily knew the answer, because she had never asked, because she had assumed she knew her grandmother, when in reality, she only knew her reputation. At dawn, as the first rays of sunlight began to stream through the window, Emily closed the notebook, and she made a decision. She stood up and left the room, went to her own room and took out her laptop, opened a new document, and began to write. The Legacy of Eleanor Carter, a biography. If Maria could document Grandma Eleanor's life in a notebook, Emily could do more. She could write her whole story. She could interview people who knew her. She could preserve her legacy in a way that would survive beyond memory. She could make her grandmother immortal. Emily spent the next few weeks dividing her time between caring for her grandmother and documenting her life. She interviewed former employees from the design school, tracked down classmates from the 1950s, found photographs in newspaper archives, and each discovery, each story, she shared with Grandma Eleanor. Today, I talked to Barbara Hernandez. Remember her? She was your first student in 1965. She's 75 now, and a famous designer in Paris. She told me that you changed her life, that she came from a town so poor she ate only one meal a day, that you gave her a full scholarship, plus money for food, plus clothes, that you never told her it was charity. You just said, talent deserves investment. Grandma Eleanor's eyes focused. They shimmered. Barbara cried when we talked, Emily continued. She said, there are 50 successful designers in the US who can trace their careers directly back to your school. 50 lives changed. 50 legacies that started with you, and slowly, with monumental effort. Grandma Eleanor's lips moved. Worth it. 4 words. It took her almost 2 minutes to pronounce them. But they were clear, intentional, powerful. Emily took her grandmother's hand. Yes, Grandma, it was very worth it. A month after the day Emily had heard Maria singing, something extraordinary happened. Emily was applying rose lotion to Grandma Eleanor's arms, softly singing a ballad that Maria had taught her when she felt something. A movement, small, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. Grandma Eleanor's hand, which normally lay still, had moved. Only an inch, only a tremor, but it had moved intentionally. Emily froze. Grandma! Grandma Eleanor's eyes were focused on her with an intensity that Emily hadn't seen in years. And then, with an effort that seemed to cost every ounce of energy in her body, Grandma Eleanor raised her hand 2 inches, 4 inches, and placed it on Emily's hand. Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. Grandma, you moved. You moved. Tears began to flow freely down Emily's face. Elena, who had been organizing medication on the other side of the room, rushed over. What happened? She asked, her voice tight with concern. She moved, Emily said, her voice filled with wonder. She raised her hand and placed it over mine, a gesture of shared disbelief. Maria looked at Grandma Eleanor, her eyes shining. That's extraordinary. The doctors said the neurological damage was permanent. Emily turned to her grandmother. Can you do it again, Grandma? Can you move your hand again? Grandma Eleanor closed her eyes, concentrating, and slowly, with tremors. She lifted her hand again. This time she pointed toward something, toward the bureau where the family photographs were displayed. Emily followed the direction of her trembling finger. You want to see the photos? She asked softly. Grandma Eleanor nodded, a small movement of her head, but clear. Emily picked up the photo frame and showed it to her. It was a family photo from 30 years ago. Grandma Eleanor, her daughter Maria, and a little Emily about 7 years old. This photo, Grandma, from when we went to Palm Springs. Grandma Eleanor's lips moved. Maria, she whispered. Emily felt her heart clench. Her mother, Maria, had died 8 years ago in a car accident. It was after that loss that Grandma Eleanor had the stroke. The doctors had said the emotional stress was likely the trigger. Yes, Grandma. Mom, I miss her every day. Her voice cracked with emotion. Grandma Eleanor struggled to form more words. Me too, she managed, her voice barely audible. And then she did something that Emily would never forget. With her trembling hand, she touched Emily's face in the photograph. Then she lifted that same hand and touched Emily's real face, connecting past and present, connecting the little girl she had been with the woman she had become. I love you, Grandma Eleanor whispered. 5 syllables that took almost a minute to pronounce. 5 syllables that were worth more than any business deal Emily had ever signed. Emily embraced her grandmother with all the care in the world, acutely aware of how fragile her body was, but needing that contact, that reassurance. I love you too, Grandma. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. Maria watched from the side of the room, discreetly wiping away tears, a silent observer to this intimate moment. After that day, Grandma Eleanor began to show more signs of improvement, not dramatic, not curative, but significant. She could move her right hand intentionally. She could form short words more easily. She could hold eye contact for longer periods, and something else. She began to smile, not much, and never big, but small. Genuine smiles that lit up her face. Maria explained that this was not unusual. The human brain has plasticity. When given adequate stimulation, love, a reason to fight, it can create new neural connections even after severe damage, but it requires constant work and constant love. A relentless commitment to nurturing the mind and spirit. Emily intensified her efforts. She began to bring in live music. She hired a string quartet to play classical music in Grandma Eleanor's room once a week. She watched as her grandmother's eyes filled with tears of joy with each song. She organized visits from former students from the Parsons School of Design. One by one, they came to thank Grandma Eleanor for changing their lives. And one by one, Emily watched them kiss her grandmother's trembling hands and weep. She hired a massage therapist specializing in bedridden patients. She learned that regular therapeutic touch could prevent muscle atrophy and improve the quality of life. And every night, she read chapters of the biography she was writing to her, sharing with Grandma Eleanor her own life, narrated back to her, showing her that her life had mattered, that she had changed the world. But despite all these small improvements, Emily knew the truth that Maria had told her from the beginning. Grandma Eleanor was not going to heal completely. The damage was too extensive, and eventually, her body was going to give way. The question wasn't if, it was when. 3 months after the day that Emily had heard Maria singing, the crisis arrived. Emily received a call at 3 in the morning. It was Patricia, the night nurse. "Ms. Carter, you need to come immediately. Grandma Eleanor has a very high fever, and she's having difficulty breathing." Emily arrived home in 20 minutes, driving through the empty city with her heart in her throat. When she entered the room, she found Patricia by the bed, monitoring vital signs, and Maria, who had also come despite it being 3 in the morning. "What happened?" Emily asked, rushing to the bed. Grandma Eleanor was struggling to breathe, each inhalation a visible effort. Her face was flushed with fever. "Pneumonia," Maria said in a serious voice. "One of the biggest risks for bedridden patients. I've already called the ambulance." Emily took her grandmother's hand. "I'm going to be here, Grandma. You're not alone," she whispered, her voice trembling. The paramedics arrived 10 minutes later. As they prepared Grandma Eleanor for transport, one of them spoke to Emily in a low voice. "Ma'am, given your grandmother's condition and her age, we need to know, does she have advanced directives? Do not resuscitate orders." Emily froze. "I don't know. We never talked about that." The realization hit her like a physical blow. The paramedic nodded understandingly. "You'll want to talk to the doctors at the hospital about the options." In the ambulance on the way to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, Emily held Grandma Eleanor's hand and faced a truth she had been avoiding. Her grandmother was dying. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And Emily had never asked her what she wanted. She had never had that difficult conversation about the end of life, because talking about it meant admitting that the end was near. And Emily, who had found her grandmother again after years of emotional absence, was not ready to say goodbye. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed severe pneumonia. They started aggressive antibiotics, but the doctor in charge, Dr. Ramirez, was honest with Emily. "Your grandmother is very fragile, Ms. Carter. The immune system of someone bedridden is weak. Pneumonia in geriatric bedridden patients has a high mortality rate. We need to discuss treatment options and, frankly, end-of-life options." Emily sat in the consultation room with Dr. Ramirez, Maria at her side for support. "What do you mean by end-of-life options?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Ramirez spoke with kindness but clarity. If your grandmother stops breathing, do we want to intubate her, put her on a ventilator, perform CPR if her heart stops? These are decisions that you need to make as her legal representative. Emily felt the weight of the world crashing down on her shoulders. I don't know what she would want. Maria spoke softly. Yes, you do. Emily looked at her. What? You know, Maria repeated. You've learned who your grandma Eleanor was these last few months. You've documented her life. You've spoken with people who knew her. You know what kind of woman she was. Ask yourself, would that woman want to be connected to machines, unable to move, unable to speak, kept alive artificially? Emily closed her eyes. Grandma Eleanor had built her life on independence, on strength, on dignity. No, Emily admitted, she wouldn't want that. Dr. Ramirez nodded. Then I would recommend comfort care. We'll treat the pneumonia aggressively, but if the moment comes where interventions would only prolong the agony, not prolong real life, then we let her go in peace. Emily felt her heart breaking, but she nodded. Yes, dignity over duration. That's what she would choose. The next few days were a roller coaster. The antibiotics seemed to be working. Grandma Eleanor's fever would go down. Then it would spike again. Her breathing would improve. Then it would worsen. Emily didn't leave the hospital. She slept in a chair next to the bed. Maria brought food and forced her to eat. Patricia took shifts so Emily could sleep a few hours. And on the third day, Grandma Eleanor opened her eyes. Her gaze found Emily. Immediately, Emily leaned closer, taking her hand. I'm here, Grandma. I'm here. Grandma Eleanor's lips moved. Emily had to lean in close to hear the whisper. Thank you. What are you thanking me for, Grandma? Grandma Eleanor struggled to form the words. For returning. Emily felt the tears streaming down her face. I should never have left. A flicker of the old strength appeared in Grandma Eleanor's eyes. Forgiven. And then, with enormous effort, she added two more words. Maria, too. Emily turned and saw Maria standing in the doorway of the hospital room. Come, Emily said to her. She wants to see you. Maria came to the other side of the bed. She took Grandma Eleanor's other hand. I'm here, Grandma Eleanor. Grandma Eleanor's eyes moved between Emily and Maria, two women who loved her. One by blood, the other by choice. Both equally valued. My angels, Grandma Eleanor whispered. And in that moment, in that hospital room, something healed. Not Grandma Eleanor's body, that remained fragile, was still failing, but something deeper, the chasm between duty and love, between obligation and genuine care, between doing what's right and feeling what's right. Emily understood then something that had taken 3 months to learn, that loving someone vulnerable requires more than resources, requires more than paying professionals. It requires presence, it requires sacrifice, it requires being willing to see the pain, to touch the fragility, to face mortality. It requires humanity. And Maria had taught her that, not with words, but with example, showing her day after day that true care looks like love, that there's no difference between the two when done correctly. Grandma Eleanor survived the pneumonia. The antibiotics finally worked. After a week, she was discharged from the hospital with strict instructions for continuing care. But everyone knew this had been a warning, a reminder that time was limited. Emily made a decision. She cancelled a business trip to Europe, then another to Asia. Eventually, she gave up all international travel. Her CFO asked if she was sure. These contracts are worth millions, Emily. My grandmother is priceless, Emily responded. The contracts can wait. She can't, and she stayed. not just physically in Phoenix, but present in her grandmother's life, in a way she'd never been before. She converted one of the rooms in the Bel Air Estates mansion into an office and worked from home. That way, she could spend at least 6 hours a day with Grandma Eleanor, feeding her, bathing her, reading to her, singing to her, living with her, instead of just waiting for her to die. Maria continued working, but her role had evolved. She was no longer just a housekeeper. She was a care coordinator. She was a teacher. She was a friend. And one afternoon, while the three of them were together in the room, Emily took a deep breath and said something that she'd been rehearsing in her mind for days. "Maria, I need to tell you something." Maria looked up from the flowers she was arranging. "Yes, I want to triple your salary, and I want to make you a partner in the Carter textile empire." Maria blinked, surprised. "What? Emily, that's too much." "No, it's not." Emily stepped closer. "You taught me to see my grandmother. You taught me to care for her. You taught me that dignity is the greatest gift we can give. Those lessons are priceless, but I can try to compensate you in some way." Maria shook her head. "I don't do this for money, Emily. I do it because I love Grandma Eleanor, and because I see in you a woman who is learning what really matters in life. I know, but you deserve to be recognized. You deserve security. You deserve to know that your work has value. My work has value because it changes lives," Maria responded softly. "That's all the compensation I need." But Emily insisted, and eventually they reached a compromise. Maria's salary would be tripled, but instead of a stake in the Carter textile empire, Emily would establish a fund to train caregivers in techniques of dignified care, a program that would teach others what Maria had taught her, that caring for the vulnerable is the most important work there is, and that it must be done with love, not just with efficiency. 3 weeks after leaving the hospital, on a quiet November afternoon, Grandma Eleanor did something extraordinary. Emily was reading to her the final chapter of the biography she had written, the chapter about legacy, about how the 50 lives that Grandma Eleanor had directly changed, had influenced another 1,000 indirectly, about how her life had been a stone thrown into a lake, creating ripples that extended far beyond what she had seen. When Emily finished reading, Grandma Eleanor looked at her with clear and focused eyes, and she spoke. Not a word, not a short phrase, but a complete thought. "My life had meaning because I loved more than I feared." 11 words. It took her almost 5 minutes to pronounce them, with pauses between each one to gather strength, but she said them all. Emily dropped the manuscript. "Grandma, that's the most you've spoken since the stroke." Grandma Eleanor smiled, a full smile, genuine, beautiful. And then she said something more. "And now, you have learned the same." Those words resonated in Emily Carter's heart for days. "And now, you have learned the same, to love more than you fear." Emily had spent 15 years fearing failure, fearing losing the Carter textile empire that her grandmother had built, fearing she wouldn't measure up. And in that fear, she had forgotten to love. She'd forgotten that success isn't measured in dollars, but in lives touched. That real power doesn't come from controlling companies, but from serving people. That greatness isn't what you build, but how you treat those who can't give you anything in return. But now, she knew, and that changed everything. Emily began to transform her company. she implemented living wage policies that went far beyond the legal minimum. She established care programs for employees with sick family members, allowing them to work from home or take paid leave without penalty. She created the Eleanor program, named in honor of her grandmother, a program that trained home health aides in dignified care techniques for people who were bedridden or had disabilities. Maria ran the program, teaching others what she'd learned in her 15 years as a nurse, and each graduate of the program received not only certification, but also a guaranteed pay raise and access to mental health resources, because caring for the vulnerable requires caring for the caregivers too. But more important than all of that, Emily continued to show up, day after day, week after week, month after month, 6 hours daily with her grandmother, reading, singing, massaging, talking about the past, the present, the dreams Grandma Eleanor had had, and the ones that had come true. And in those 6 hours, Emily learned more about life, love, and legacy than in 15 years building business empires. She learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, that depending on others doesn't diminish your worth. That dignity doesn't come from what you can do, but from how you allow others to see you when you can't do anything. She learned that time is the only truly limited resource, that you can recover lost money, lost contracts, lost opportunities, but you can never recover time lost with someone you love. And she learned that true love isn't a feeling, it's an action. It's showing up every day. It's washing feet that can't walk. It's feeding mouths that can barely swallow. It's singing songs to someone who may not be able to respond, but who can definitely hear. It's being someone's angel when they can no longer fly. 6 months after that day, Emily had heard Maria singing, "Spring arrived." Grandma Eleanor had survived the winter, something the doctors had said was unlikely, but she had survived, not thriving, not cured, but alive, and more importantly, loved. In April, Emily organized something special. She transformed the mansion's garden, the garden that Grandma Eleanor looked at every day from her window, but hadn't visited in 4 years, into an outdoor ballroom. She hired an orchestra specializing in music from the 40s and 50s, big band, swing, the songs Grandma Eleanor had danced to in her youth, and she invited 50 people. Each one of them had been touched by Grandma Eleanor's life, former students, employees from the design school, friends from decades past, and with the help of a medical team, Maria, Patricia, and Emily moved Grandma Eleanor to a special wheelchair and took her down to the garden. When Grandma Eleanor saw the transformed garden, the flowers in full bloom, the lights hanging from the trees, the orchestra tuning up, her eyes filled with tears. "What is this?" she managed to ask. Emily knelt beside the wheelchair. "It's a party, Grandma, in your honor, to celebrate your 87th birthday, to celebrate everything you've given to the world." The orchestra began to play. The first dance was a swing number, of course, Grandma Eleanor's favorite song, "In the Mood." And Emily did something she had never done before. She stood in front of her grandmother's wheelchair, took her trembling hands in her own, and danced, not moving Grandma Eleanor, that would have been dangerous, but dancing for her, letting her grandmother experience the dance through her eyes, moving to the rhythm of the music Grandma Eleanor loved. Emily looked directly at her, allowing her grandmother to see every twirl, every step, every expression of joy. And as she danced, Emily whispered, "This is for all the times I didn't dance with you when I could, for all the Sundays I didn't take you to the Palladium, for all the lost opportunities to create memories together." Grandma Eleanor smiled through her tears. When the song ended, another person approached, Beatrice Hernandez, now 75 years old. Grandma Eleanor's first student. "May I have this dance, teacher?" Beatrice asked, and she danced. In front of Grandma Eleanor, letting her former teacher see how the girl from a poor town who barely ate once a day had become a woman of grace and dignity. One by one, the guests approached. Some danced, others simply knelt beside the wheelchair and took Grandma Eleanor's hands, thanking her for changing their lives. Maria watched from the side, smiling through tears of her own. Emily approached her. "Thank you," she said. "None of this would have happened without you." Maria shook her head. "This was always in you, Emily. You just needed to remember what was important." At the end of the afternoon, as the sun began to set and the guests slowly said goodbye, Grandma Eleanor had spoken more words than she had in 4 years combined. Not long sentences, not speeches, but words full of meaning. "Thank you. I love you. Beautiful. Happy. Remember." Small words, enormous emotions. When Emily took Grandma Eleanor back to her room that night, her grandmother was exhausted, but radiant. Emily helped her into bed, applying the rose lotion that she now made herself with petals from the garden, using the recipe Maria had taught her. "Was it a good day, Grandma?" Grandma Eleanor nodded. "The best." And then, looking directly into Emily's eyes, she said something more. "I'm ready." Emily felt her blood run cold. "Ready for what, Grandma?" Grandma Eleanor took a slow breath. "To rest. I lived well, love well. Now I can go in peace." A pang of panic shot up Emily's throat. "No, Grandma, no, don't say that. I still need you here." But Grandma Eleanor shook her head gently. "You don't need me anymore. Now you know what really matters. Now you understand that loving is more important than winning, that being present is more valuable than being busy, that dignity is the greatest gift of all." Tears streamed freely down Emily's face. "But I've only just started getting to know you. Again. I barely have any time left with you." Grandma Eleanor raised her trembling hand and placed it on Emily's cheek. "Time isn't measured in years. It's measured in depth. These 6 months with you were worth more than the previous 4 years combined." Emily held her grandmother's hand against her cheek. "I'm not ready to say goodbye. No one ever is ready. But when the moment comes, we must have the grace to let go." Emily stayed there, holding her grandmother, until Grandma Eleanor drifted off to sleep. And she knew her grandmother was right. Death would come. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when it did, Emily would have to have the strength to allow her grandmother to depart in peace, surrounded by love, with her dignity intact. 2 months later, on a quiet June morning, Grandma Eleanor didn't wake up. Maria was the first to find her. She'd come early, as always, to help with the morning bath. When she entered the room, she knew immediately. Grandma Eleanor lay in bed, a small smile on her face, her hands folded peacefully over her chest. It looked as though she'd simply fallen asleep and decided not to wake up. Maria gently touched her forehead. "Goodbye, Grandma Eleanor. It was an honor to know you." Then she went to wake Emily. When Emily entered the room and saw her grandmother, there was no hysteria, no denial, just a deep sadness mixed with something else. Gratitude. Emily knelt beside the bed and took her grandmother's cold hand. "Thank you for waiting for me, Grandma. Thank you for giving me time to find you again. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to change, that it's never too late to love." The doctors said later that Grandma Eleanor had died peacefully, of heart failure, in her sleep, without pain, in the most dignified way possible. She had lived 87 years. She had built an empire. She had changed 50 lives directly and 1,000 indirectly, and she had died surrounded by love. In her own bed, with the scent of the roses she loved in the air. The funeral was huge. Hundreds of people came to say goodbye to the woman who had opened doors when everyone else slammed them shut, who had believed in talent when everyone else saw only poverty, who had lived with dignity and had died in the same way. Emily spoke at the funeral. She didn't read from prepared notes. She spoke from the heart. My grandmother taught me that success isn't what you accumulate, but what you give. That power isn't controlling, but serving. That greatness isn't being admired, but being loved. She paused, looking at the casket, covered in red roses. But if I'm honest, it wasn't my grandmother who taught me those lessons directly. It was Maria Torres, a woman my grandmother might have hired as a housekeeper, but who became her angel. Emily searched the crowd for Maria, who insisted on sitting in the back, trying to remain invisible as always. Maria, please, come up here. Maria shook her head, uncomfortable, but people began to applaud softly, encouraging her. Finally, she stood up and walked to the front. Emily took her hand. This woman showed me what it means to care with dignity. She showed me that the most important job in the world isn't running companies or signing contracts. It's loving the vulnerable when no one is watching. It's giving dignity to those society has forgotten. It's being someone's angel when they can no longer fly on their own. Tears streamed down Maria's face. And in honor of my grandmother and Maria, Emily continued, I am announcing the creation of the Eleanor Carter Foundation for Dignified Care, an organization dedicated to training caregivers, to paying living wages, and to reminding the world that how we treat our most vulnerable defines who we are as a society. The applause filled the church. After the funeral, as people slowly dispersed, Emily and Maria stood alone by the graveside, where Grandma Eleanor would be buried next to her husband, Joseph. She would be proud of you, Maria said softly. Emily shook her head. She would be proud of you. You loved her when I couldn't. You saw her when I wouldn't. You were her angel. Maria smiled through her tears. No, Emily, she was my angel. She reminded me why I chose to care for people in the first place. She gave me purpose again. She showed me that burnout wasn't because I cared too much, but because I was in a system that didn't let me show that care appropriately. The two women stood in silence for a moment, honoring the woman who had changed them both. Finally, Emily spoke. What are you going to do? Now, Maria looked towards the horizon. I'm going to run the foundation. If you still want me to, I'm going to teach others what I learned, that dignity isn't a luxury, it's a right, and that everyone, no matter how vulnerable, deserves to be treated as the treasures they are. Emily nodded. That's exactly what I want you to do. They embraced, two women who had been transformed by the love of an elderly, bedridden woman who reminded them that life isn't measured in achievements, but in connections, not in power, but in presence, not in what you have, but in how you give. 6 months later, the Eleanor Carter Foundation had trained its first class of 100 caregivers, each one certified in dignified care techniques, each one committed to seeing their patients not as tasks, but as people. Emily attended the graduation, as proud as if it were her own company, reaching a major milestone. Because, in a sense, it was. This was her true legacy. Not the textile factories, not the international contracts, but this, 100 people, committed to loving the vulnerable, and it would grow. Next year, 200. The year after that, 500. Ripples on a lake, spreading far beyond what anyone could see. Maria spoke at the graduation, sharing her story, how she had worked 15 years as a nurse before burning out, how she had found purpose again, caring for Grandma Eleanor, how she had taught Emily that it's never too late to change, and at the end of her speech, she said something Emily would never forget. Each person in this room will care for someone vulnerable, and in those private moments when no one is watching, when no one is applauding, when the work is hard, and unglamorous. I want you to remember something. You are someone's angel. Your kindness is the miracle that person experiences. Your dignity is the gift they remember. She paused, looking at each graduate. So, care well, love deeply, and remember that the most important job in the world is not building empires. It's holding hands, it's singing songs, it's giving dignity to those society has forgotten. Because at the end of our lives, no one will ask how much we earned or what we built. They'll ask how many we loved and how we treated them when they couldn't give us anything in return. The applause filled the auditorium, and Emily, sitting in the front row, knew that Grandma Eleanor was smiling from wherever she was, because her legacy continued, not in buildings with her name on them, but in hands that held gently, in songs sung to those who couldn't sing for themselves, in dignity given to those society said no longer mattered. That night, Emily visited her grandmother's grave. She brought red roses, of course. She knelt by the headstone and spoke softly. "We did it, Grandma. The foundation is working. We're changing how society sees caregiving. We're reminding people that dignity is a right, not a privilege." The wind blew softly through the trees in the cemetery, and I know you'd tell me, this is just the beginning, that 100 caregivers are something, but not enough, that we need to change laws, policies, attitudes. Emily smiled through her tears. "And you're right, but I'm ready for that battle, because you taught me that life has meaning when you love more than you fear, and I'm not afraid anymore." She placed the roses in the vase by the headstone. "Thank you for waiting for me, Grandma. Thank you for giving me Maria. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to become the person you were always meant to be." And as she walked back to her car, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of having all the answers, but the peace of knowing what questions mattered. Not the peace of having finished the work, but the peace of knowing what the real work was. Not the peace of having no pain, but the peace of knowing that the pain had purpose. This story was told to me by Emily Carter 3 months ago. In an interview for an article about the Eleanor Carter Foundation, the foundation has now trained over 500 caregivers across Phoenix, each committed to giving dignity to the vulnerable. But what struck me the most wasn't the number. It was when I asked Emily what she had learned from this whole experience. She was silent for a long moment. Then she answered, "I learned that the most important people in our lives are often the most invisible, the ones who clean, the ones who care, the ones who serve without expecting recognition. They were invisible to me until Maria taught me to see. I learned that time is our most valuable resource, and how we spend it defines who we are, more than anything we build. But more importantly, I learned that it's never too late. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to love. It's never too late to be someone's angel." Those words have stayed with me since then, because we all know someone vulnerable, someone who needs care, someone whose society has forgotten or minimized. And we all have the choice that Emily had. We can avoid them out of fear. We can pay someone else to care and then wash our hands. Or we can show up. We can love more than we fear. We can be someone's angel. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to do something. Think of someone vulnerable in your life, a grandparent, a sick parent, a forgotten neighbor, and show up for them. You don't need to transform your entire life like Emily did, but maybe you can make a call, a visit, an act of kindness, because in those small acts is where love lives. Not in grand gestures, but in showing up consistently day after day, with dignity and grace. And if you work as a caregiver, if you are the Maria in someone's life, I want you to know something. Your work matters. Your kindness is seen. Your love makes a difference. Maybe no one is applauding, maybe no one is noticing, but the person you care for knows, and that is enough. Before I finish, I want to invite you to leave a super thanks if this story inspired you to value the caregivers in your life more. Not for me, but as a reminder to yourself that you are going to honor the people who do invisible work. And in the comments, tell me, who is the invisible angel in your life, the person who cares without applause, who loves without recognition, who serves without expectation? Mention them. Give them the recognition they deserve, because at the end of the day, the Mariahs of the world are the ones who truly change lives, and they deserve to be seen. Thank you for listening to this story. Thank you for valuing what truly matters. And remember, it's never too late to love more than you fear. See you in the next story.